So a little indie game called Valheim has been blowing up everywhere lately. Even though a team of only 5 people worked on it, it's already one of the most popular Steam games of all time. Given its huge success, you've probably already heard all about it, but for those who haven't, it's another one of those early access, open world survival crafting games, with a Viking twist. Despite that description bringing up flashbacks of countless horrible titles, I can assure you that's not the case here. On the other hand, the game design does draw pretty direct inspiration from many similar titles. It's not particularly original, so how is it so massively successful? Well, there's a lot of factors at play here, so I'll try to break them down into a few major points. Now, I don't usually buy early access games, but with all the fanfare surrounding it, I decided to give it a shot. It has a surprising amount of content for an early access game. Just go check the Steam reviews. You'll find tons of reviews of people with 50 to 100 hours played. And it's light on story, so it's not like you're just waiting for the next update to drop. So, with that in mind, let's just take a look at the design behind Valheim. To understand where Valheim gets its ideas from, we can look at countless similar titles. The developers specifically mentioned Skyrim, Breath of the Wild, and Terraria as large influences for the project. We can obviously draw parallels to the Nordic roots that Skyrim was based on, accounting for a large portion of the setting, world, and lore. Skyrim isn't unique in its use of this pseudo-Norse mythology, but it is very wide-reaching compared to other titles. Meanwhile, the systemic open world has many similarities to Breath of the Wild, from large things like weather having a big impact on gameplay, down to smaller features like felling trees that can crush things. Then we have Terraria, with its open world heavily focused on tiered progression. You can venture far out from the start, but you generally need to prepare and upgrade items in one zone before moving on to the next. These separate areas are often gated by boss fights that doubly encourage the style of prepare and progress. And those are just the titles the developers have directly mentioned. There's so many other games we could easily draw parallels to here, like the sense of vast exploration through increasingly dangerous biomes found in Subnautica, or the deliberate, stamina-based combat of Dark Souls, featuring a dodge roll, corpse runs, and more. And we can't forget the use any skill to level it up system in games like RuneScape or Oblivion, plus the ocean of other open-world survival crafting games like Minecraft, Rust, The Forest, Don't Starve, and so many more. Is Valheim a good game? Absolutely. Is the open world as dynamic as Breath of the Wild? No. Is the exploration as satisfying as Subnautica? No. Is the combat as complex as Dark Souls? No. Are the RPG elements as in-depth as Skyrim or Oblivion? No. Does Valheim bring in any incredibly unique elements that you can't find in other games? Not really. If you haven't played it yet, you're probably thinking, well, what's the big deal here? Why is this survival game a huge success where so many others have failed? Well, that brings me to the point of this video. Originality is a facade. Execution is everything. In the words of T.S. Eliot, immature poets imitate, mature poets steal. Bad poets deface what they take, and good poets make it into something better, or at least something different. You see, games do not need to be original, whatever that means, to be good. Think of some of your favorite games. How many systems in those games are just slightly different versions of things in other games? Just about all of them, I'd bet. Even going all the way back to early video games, we can see systems from board and card games that existed long before them. Broad ideas are reused, but small things are changed or improved with each new title. This is how games have reached the point they're at now. Countless titles improving on the work of the past in incremental bits and pieces. It's safe to say that Minecraft and Terraria share a similar concept and countless systems across both games. Yet you can ask anyone who's played both and they'll have a clear favorite between the two. The ideas may be similar at a high level, but it's all those tiny little details that make each game incredibly different. As with any similar titles, the difference in execution is the single most important factor. Even if no single idea in Valheim is all that unique on its own, the game as a whole is still a very polished, cohesive experience. Now, it may not be as polished as some AAA games, but for a small indie team it's surprisingly bug-free and well-designed. Not to mention it's packed to the brim with content, especially compared to other early access titles. Aside from the mention of further bosses, the game could already be considered a complete experience. If they follow through with their roadmap to release, there's no doubt it will sit among the most successful survival games of all time. In fact, it's already reached that level if we're just talking about sales numbers. Coming from a background in game development myself, this is one of the hardest concepts to explain to new and aspiring developers. Go to any forum and you'll find tons of idea people posting concepts for their next big MMO, but not actually working on the game. It's very difficult to convince these people that ideas are a dime a dozen. Anyone can dream up a big game idea, but the actual work of creating it is just about all that matters. I mean, even if this video gets popular enough, you'll see people arguing in the comments about how a good idea is all you need to make a great game. It's just not true. Every developer I know has countless game ideas that they love to make. Some even make prototypes for all of their wild ideas, but the successful ones are all doing the same thing. Picking just one idea and actually working on it. I often compare things to movies, because the movie industry is a little less opaque than games. For example, if you gave two famous directors the script, budget, and team to make Lord of the Rings, would they both make the same movies? Do you think Quentin Tarantino's Lord of the Rings would be anything like Tim Burton's Lord of the Rings? Of course not. Personally, I'd pay to see both of them, even if they followed the script line for line. Now what if they handed you the same script, budget, and team for the project? Would your movie be a flop despite everything you had to work with? Unless you're already a skilled director, the answer is probably yes. Like I said before, originality is a facade. Execution is everything. In the end, everyone's definition of originality is highly personal. Is a re-uploaded file original? Is a plagiarized story original? Is a slightly modified game mechanic original? Or is nothing truly original? I can't answer these questions for you, that's just up to you to decide. But that's all beside the point. Valheim may not be very original, but it is still highly successful, for good reason. And that success lies largely in the great work done by the dev team, pulling in bits and pieces from other titles, refining them in small ways, and composing them all together into a very satisfying experience. I definitely recommend it. If you have some opinions on the whole originality discussion, feel free to leave them in the comments, or just tell me what you think of the game so far. As always, if you enjoy my work, subscribing helps out a lot. I've got a ton of big video ideas lined up, so there's always some new thing right around the corner. And with that, I'll leave you with the words of Carl Sagan. If you wish to make an apple pie truly from scratch, you must first invent the universe. Have a good one, folks.